The cradle rocks above an abyss, and common sense tells us that our existence is but a brief crack of light between two eternities of darkness. That's what this ironic-looking fellow cradling a butterfly image, Vladimir Nabokov, said about life, that the amount of time we are alive is like catching the opening and closing of a shutter. In a flash, we are here and we are gone. But I think the great black void doesn't just sandwich our existence at the two ends. Darkness encroaches on every living moment. Indeed, our lives constantly disappear into the past, never to be found again in material form. Experiences pass away forever. The amazing time that you spend with friends at a bar, or tender moments with family on the living room couch, all of these will soon exist nowhere, not even in the places that they occurred. And these disappearances happen on a monumental scale. Every word spoken by every living person, every action, every emotion, every thought, and all the art and wisdom of civilizations are sooner or later deposited into the void, led into the graveyard of history. Only a sliver of the culture of Babylon or Rome remain, and we are lucky to even have these. The vast, colossal majority of life is buried forever, and the world just seems to carry on. This is surely what Frieren feels, a character from the meteoric anime from last year, Beyond Journey's End. An elf with immortal life, the last of her kind, witnesses the brevity of human life all the time. Frieren's scale of time is so different from everyone else's that to her, any evidence she lived among them are quickly expelled. A necklace that Frieren carries, for instance, which is supposed to identify her as an accomplished mage, ceases to be understood in a mere 100 years. Names and titles are the things that we humans use to recognize others, yet they lose their meaning before we have time to mourn them. But the humans in this show, just like the humans that we are, fight against such loss with a calm vengeance. In episode 13, we learn about a warrior who gave himself a silly name so he can be easily remembered. Throughout the series, statues are seen erected as promises made between hero and village that their deeds will not be forgotten. This is, of course, not unlike the function of monuments in our own world. But remembrance is always frail. Memories can be distorted. Legends are inadvertently rewritten. In Frieren, the stories of the heroes become exaggerated versions of themselves when the heroes themselves have passed. In another example, we find that most of the surviving writings of Frieren's old master are counterfeit. This is much like how objects in our own world are cast with illusions. The most expensive painting ever sold, Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, turns out to be a fake, a $450 million mistake. The show not only seems to understand that history can change the face of facts, it understands the deep human need for fabrication. We believed that the painting was Da Vinci because we wanted to believe it. We wanted to be in the presence of something extraordinary. At the start of the story, Frieren knows very well how quickly things change and lose their meaning, and this seems to bestow on her a particular nihilism. But something unexpected happens. A memory that should have been as brief and tenuous as the rest of them, her adventure with the hero Himmel, turned out to be much more meaningful, much more enduring than she thought. And although Frieren is an elf, I think her experience here is very similar to the experience of a human life, because our transitions into adulthood, the arrival of a mature self, is often accompanied by the establishment of core memories. Experience is no longer a homogeneous stream of undifferentiated items, as it might have been in youth. Some memories rise above the rest to become, as Nabokov eloquently put it, the exact instruments that fashion me. Indeed, Frieren's adventure with Himmel and the party becomes very much who she is. It dictates what she decides to do for years and years to come, so that Frieren is, in a very real sense, still on that same adventure, though the people she's having it with has changed. And her silly little quest for silly little spells, praised by the people she cared about, becomes a core tenet of her personality. That's what our most important memories can do. They guide our lives and gives us purpose. Very often, memories find their most natural resting place in objects. Fern still treasures the staff that her late caretaker Heiter fashioned her. Frieren still holds on to the ring that Himmel gifted her all those years ago. And Himmel erected statues of him and his friends so that Frieren could feel their presence after they pass. Often, the strongest memories are the most persistent objects. Perhaps this is because memories are so intangible, like a smoke that threatens to dissipate as soon as the fire burns out. We need a more irrefutable presence, something physical to remind us that the past was once here and we were once with our friends. But despite this, memory cannot in the end outrun eternity, and the show is very well aware of this. In episode 16, the dwarf warrior guarding his long-deceased wife's promise is revealed to not even remember what she looked like. Even our most important memories shed their furs as quickly as the season changes. Only the essential contours remain, and the details are fed to the void. Even these contours are lost eventually, which is why Frieren bids us not to live in the past, since the past is no longer responsive to our every need and desire. The present moment should and is always the most rewarding, while the burden of the past can often be more punishing. This is why when Frieren mysteriously wakes up as her past self, traveling again with Himmel, she chooses to go back to the future, forfeiting the chance to relive her most important memory. The past is something to bring with you, but not something to dwell on. And a life can only be meaningful if the present is lived to the fullest. This lesson is reflected in the structure of the series. In Japanese manga, longer flashbacks tend to be marked with black borders around the panels, so I counted them. In 122 chapters of Frieren, 400 pages are this form of flashback, which comes out to about 18.4% of the entire story. This doesn't include the shorter one-off flashbacks that aren't marked by black borders, so the percentage could be higher. Now, Frieren uses flashbacks more than most, but 18% is not an absurdly high number, and the percentage drops down to pretty much zero when important battles take place. The show understands that our sense of reality needs to be anchored to the present, no matter how important the past might be. For a show so focused on memory, this kind of restraint is a real test for an artist's grip on reality. And Frieren shares this grip with us, with those of us who feel lost and who are forced to accept that peace is hard to find in the montages of time. In truth, the passing of time is nothing grim, nothing heavy, but filled with wonder. And in that wonderment you realize it's not the start and finish of a life that defines us, nor the fading hues of a memory, nor the ending of a journey, but the most important gift of all, the present moment that gives our lives their meaning.